I want to welcome you to this afternoon's workshop, Building Resilience Resources Through Storytelling with Dr. Christine Norton. My name's Andrew Bobilia, one of the conference committee hosts for today's virtual adventure. I think we'll be utilizing a variety of mediums here, including some of the breakout rooms, and I want to remind you of the use of the chat feature, and we'll monitor that as well. If you're just trickling in, try to keep your microphone turned off unless you're ready to speak. And I'm going to let that be the end of my comments. We have precious time with Dr. Norton this afternoon, and Christine, happy to welcome you.
Thank you so much. I am really excited to be here. When I got asked to do the keynote, I was kind of like, oh. And when I got asked to do the workshop, I was like, oh, sure, no problem. That sounds very doable. But now that I have the keynote, behind me, I'm feeling a little more relaxed. I've lost my fancy background, so this is my messy office, but you can see, whoops, other side right there. I still have my canoe. My paddle is down on the ground, but anyway. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of history and background about why storytelling has become something that I've gained so much interest in. But first, I want to start off in kind of a similar manner as I did for my keynote. For those of you that were not there, I am calling in from what is now known as Texas, and I gave a land acknowledgement during my keynote, and I'd like to give it again, which is that I acknowledge and pay my respects to the Tonkawa people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work and play. And I extend gratitude to my elders past and present. And for those of you that have never been to Texas, this is actually a photo of the Texas Hill Country. It's gorgeous. It's kind of right where the coastal prairie hits the, we're actually on a giant fault line, kind of right where I-35 is, kind of hits the hill country, and the topography changes, and there's tons of limestone, and there's a huge aquifer called the Edwards Aquifer that is the size of Connecticut, and that's where a lot of Texas gets some of our fresh water from. But we have some beautiful, clean, clear rivers and streams, and a lot of people don't know that. So a little bit about my geography to share with you. I offer that also because stories often involve place, don't they? Right? I mean, it's very rare that a story takes place without some kind of setting. And we, as wilderness educators, we take people into some beautiful places. So I'll come back to that idea of place in storytelling. I mentioned pretty in depth during my keynote the larger context that we are in, right? And I don't need to rehash that for all of you, but I will just say that as I've been living through COVID-19 in particular, the racial injustice in this country, the social and political unrest, and I've been living through it with all of the layers of privilege that I have, I've still really struggled. And I have found that my own mental health and my own physical health has been challenged at times. And I think that's important to acknowledge. We have seen an increase in mental health problems, in suicide in particular. And I give you that context, I guess, because it makes this even more important. But this is not a workshop about other people. Like, this is a workshop about us. So I'm going to encourage you just to be brave and know that it's okay to be vulnerable, and also share at a level that you're comfortable with when it is time for you to share. I also have been thinking about these two concepts, right, of safety and survival. On a wilderness expedition, these are pretty important things, right? I remember working with Gettysburg College, their GRAB program with John Regenton, and we did a rock climbing trip in the Red River Gorge, about a 12-day trip. And I asked him, I was hired as a contract staff to come in. They didn't have a female outdoor leader, and so they hired me to come in for that particular trip because they had a lot of strong young women students. And so I was checking in, with John and the rest of the staff, and I said, so, I feel like, are there any like risk management policies, that I should know about, as we're going into this? And they sort of very sarcastically said, yeah, don't die. And I was like, good to know. I'm sure that's in your field manual. But really, we do know that these concepts are baseline, right? And we have to go from there. So we need to make sure that we are surviving, right? Everyone take your pulse. And to just to know that on some days, getting through it, surviving is enough. It really is. It really is enough. Now we don't want to just get stuck in survival mode, right? There's more to life than just surviving. And I heard this term during the pandemic, which was surthriving. I'm surthriving, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm just getting by, but you know what? I'm actually finding some moments to you know engage in self-care or read a good book or maybe work in my garden. And there are these little aspects of life that we've had that have actually helped us feel maybe like we're doing more than just surviving. So I want us to keep that in mind. I tell my students, so I'm teaching this crazy hybrid model right now. So imagine that you're my remote students, but then behind my computer are like 20 more live students. So we're all masked. You're seeing Zoom. I've got to get them in breakout groups. Then I've got to put you in breakout groups. I mean, it's been really crazy. And I like when my students have their cameras on, if at all possible, because I'm an experiential educator and it's all about connection. But you know what? I have never seen the levels of distress, mental health distress among the college age and graduate level students that I work with. I've never seen people struggle so much in my 13 years in academia. And I am just now saying, you know what? Maybe today's a day when you need your camera off. Maybe today's a day where you're just showing up is enough. And so I get them to assess what is their optimal level of participation. Participation and engagement is always the goal, right? For all of us in life, for ourselves, for our participants. But I think it's in these times, it's important to get people to self-assess a little bit more. And I think that's important for all of us. So this workshop is about using storytelling to build resilience. And so before we go into the concept of resilience, I just want to maybe ask, and folks could put it in the chat if they wanted, how many of you have heard of, okay, how many of you know what TED Talks are, right? Just a show of hands. That's an easy one. How many of you, though, have heard of or have attended Activate at the Association for Experiential Education International Conference? Activate. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing some hands. I got to scroll through to see you guys. Great. So Activate, with two E's at the end for experiential education, is a process of story coaching and storytelling in which we view storytelling as a form of experiential education in and of itself. So if you think about the experiential learning cycle, right, there's the what, the so what, the now what. There's the experience, the reflecting on the experience, and the integrating it. And what's funny about storytelling is it plays a role in all of those cycles. Before you bring your participants out, before they've ever met at the trailhead, they are already creating a story about what the experience is going to be like. And then in real time, they get there and the story starts to shift a little. Either it's like, wow, this is better than I thought, or this sucks. This is way worse than I thought it was going to be. It's really important as wilderness educators to use storytelling as a form of assessment, right? Checking in with your participants. I'm kind of curious what stories people have got going on about what we're about to embark on. Would anyone be willing to share, right? I'm kind of curious, how people's stories are maybe shifting midway through the activity or midway through the day, for better or for worse, right? And then, of course, at the end, we're very familiar with using storytelling to frame our experience retrospectively. But storytelling fits with all of those aspects of experiential learning. And so at AEE, we use storytelling again to elevate different voices in our community so that we expand, right? Again, we create space for new histories to be written. So I'm a storytelling coach. I was a storyteller in the first group of Activate speakers. It was terrifying because I'm used to lecturing, I'm used to public speaking, but I'm not that comfortable like talking about myself. I've gotten a lot better, but it was like very vulnerable to actually be very real. And I credit Activate when I was a speaker, but also as a coach, and just having the honor and privilege to coach and work with so many storytellers. I credit that with my growth as a human being, because I'm now a lot more comfortable and confident, and I value being real even more. So that's been a real blessing from that process. And I was excited when I heard, and I don't know when this happens or when it stopped happening, but that the WEA also had like Paul Talks. Andrew, was that right? Did you all have those? Yeah. So maybe that's something that you all will resurrect, right? Because it's super fun to get people sharing stories, not just like those, oh shit, there I was stories, right? But stories of vulnerability, stories of transformation, because those are the stories that help us build resilience. So again, resilience. I shared in my keynote that it's a controversial term, but I like to think of it as not a trait, like you're either resilient or you're not, but more like a muscle. Like if this is my resilience muscle, we all have it, right? But how strong is it? Like how do I work it out? Do I, am I supporting the strength in that area? And what's interesting is, so I think of it more as like a state of mind or a state of being that I have to enter in and I have to nurture. The interesting thing in the neuroscience literature is that states become traits. So if you look at the 6 domains of resilience, right, it's very holistic. It's a very holistic model, right? We're looking at kind of our sense of purpose and vision. We're looking at how we regulate our emotions and kind of stay very calm and in control. We look at problem solving, resourcefulness, obviously our physical well-being, nutrition, sleep, exercise, a sense of like tenacity, right? Are we persistent and tenacious? Do we have like a sense of realistic optimism, not just like Pollyanna BS, but like, okay, let's look at what we've got here. Let's consider what the possibilities are, not just the deficits or risk factors. And how do we bounce back? And one of the things I want to say about all of these things, it's so interesting, even in the realm of composure. We used to talk a lot in mental health about self-regulation. And now the term that's being used a lot more is co-regulation, because the attachment literature, the neuroscience of attachment, teaches us that I usually don't just calm down in a vacuum. Now, sometimes I do, right? If I'm in like a faculty meeting, I sort of have to just channel my inner regulatory skills, right? But in general, like if I really need to self-regulate, I'm going to go outside. Well, guess what that is? That's co-regulation with Mother Nature. Or I'm going to call Paul or Andrew and be like, dude, oh my God, you'll never guess, right? And then I need someone to kind of, match me. It's like Luther the anger translator, right? He kind of matches you, and then you feel validated, and just that sense of love and belonging and validation kind of brings us down. So what my point is that none of us are resilient without each other. All of these things require support networks, a social context, right? And resources and support. So that's my definition of resilience for this workshop. And so if it works for you, great. If you have more to add, awesome, throw it in the chat and we can talk about it towards the end as well. When I've done this workshop, I have used this model of creating a healing circle. I don't want to freak out anyone, right? It seems a little like kumbaya-ish, but whenever you're gonna do a workshop that is experiential and participatory, it's pretty important to have some group norms to promote and maintain physical and emotional safety as much as possible. So this model of a healing circle is being used in human service organizations. And it's kind of like this idea of stepping out of our ordinary time into the safe and accepting environment. And that we come together today with open minds and open hearts, really to learn something new and to continue to strengthen ourselves and this community. So some of the conditions for creating a healing circle, this beautiful space, is treating each other with kindness and respect, listening with compassion and curiosity, honor one another's unique ways to healing, right? We're not here obviously for therapy, but even just in the way that we share maybe how we cope with some of the things we're going through, just to respect that people are very different in that sense. Holding stories confidential is important. If you want to send a comment or a little message to someone on the Whova app, like, wow, that was really meaningful to hear that. I would love to share that with a friend. Just check in and make sure that their story is yours to share. And then, of course, just listening to our own internal guidance about our level of participation, what we want to share, all of that. Does that make sense to people? Any questions? Okay. So again, when we talk about resilience, this is just something that's so important for me to remember and remind myself and remind you and remind all my students that I work with. There is no shame in the struggle. I help found and run a program at Texas State called FACES, which is Foster Care Alumni Creating Educational Success. And these are college students that have lived experience in the foster care system, and they come to higher ed with a lot of intersectionality. Most of them are students of color. Most of them are first generation college students. Most of them are coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And they bring with them a history of complex trauma. And so like asking for help is a really hard thing for them because they already have been told they don't belong in higher ed and they've kind of internalized that. And so half the battle with me is just normalizing the struggle so that they know, like, look, I struggle too, right? We all have to be able to ask for help. So that is a part of building our resilience. In terms of looking at why we struggle, especially in these times of challenge in our society, we have to remember it's not weakness, it's biology. So I love this slide. It's just really helpful to me about looking at how trauma, which we are all experiencing at varying levels, interrupts our health and affects the central nervous system. So when you think, oh, well, I'm not experiencing trauma, right? Well, chronic stress counts. If you are on 8.5 to 10 hours of Zoom meetings a day, that's not how it was meant to be, right? And so that might even lead to some of that chronic stress. Racial trauma, COVID, natural disasters. Again, we talked about all this. And so if we're thinking about what's happening for us, right, we know and we can see right here that we get very out of balance, right? Our central nervous system gets out of balance. And we know these, right? Fight, flight, freeze, disconnect, avoid. There's another one that's not on here, which is tend and befriend. Anyone heard of tend and befriend? Again, these are not good or bad. Sometimes you got to get the hell out of there. Sometimes you got to fight. Sometimes you got to just, okay, peacemaker, make sure everyone's all right. The point is they're not always sustainable or adaptive in the moment or in that environment, right? And so we have these ways that these things show up, right? And so what happens, we have a central nervous system. We also have a social nervous system, which is that co-regulation piece. And it affects how we interact with people. And when we're experiencing trauma, we can't inhibit or regulate our interactions with other people very well. And so you should just know that, right, about yourself and your participants. And so I'm going to teach us some skills about resilience to check in. Am I in my resilience zone, or has trauma bumped me out of my resilience zone? If so, don't send that email, right? Just had to do that. So, we hear all the time about being trauma informed. I am working with Steve Smith of Experiential Consulting on trauma informed risk management, right? What does this mean to be trauma informed? And so we don't really have time to go through all of these aspects of what it means, but it has social components, it has cultural components, it involves intent, but it also involves impact. And most of all, it means being strengths-based, radically inclusive, and non-coercive, right? So even just shifting our language as educators to be more invitational, even related to that question about challenge and the importance of challenge in the work that we do. So this is our resilient zone, right? This is, none of us, first of all, very few of us, I should say, are like this. I am definitely not. I was not wired like this from birth. But it's healthy to be like this, right? It's normative to be like this. But it's exhausting to our bodies, our brains, and our relationships if we're like this, right? And so it's important to understand that when we experience traumatic or stressful events or stressful or traumatic triggers, right, that we can get bumped out of our resilience zone. I thank Sandy Newis, who is a psychologist in the Asheville area, works with Paul Wolf on a couple of projects for really, you know, involving me in the community resilience model. And this research coming right out of that is so helpful. I actually, oh my gosh, where is it? It's in my messy office somewhere. It's somewhere. I have this laminated in my office because it's such a great reminder for me to just ask myself that question. Am I in my resilience zone? What do you think one of the biggest ways we know we're not in our resilience zone is? Like, what's one of the biggest red flags? Would anyone want to just write it in the chat? Or this is what happens to me when I drink coffee. Yeah, I mean, that's hilarious. This is what happens to me when I don't drink coffee. I get stuck in the low zone. So, yeah, I think we have to be aware of the food we eat, the things that we put in our body certainly can affect this, the amount of sleep we're getting, right? As well as traumatic events. Yes, immediately someone used the word body, right? Our bodies keep score. Our bodies don't lie. We have issues in our tissues. That's what my yoga instructor says, right? So when you are wondering, am I in my resilience zone? Check in with your body. Your stomach might get tight. Yeah, I see Lucas is doing a little neck roll. That's good. That's good, right? We have Zoom neck right now, computer neck. But check in with your body, right? And then do some grounding. And we'll talk about what it takes to kind of bring ourselves back in. And primarily, we're going to use storytelling, but I'll teach you a few other ways. I think it's really important also to kind of think about what your default setting is when you get bumped out of your resilience zone. Like, so for me, I run kind of hot anyway, right? Like I'm probably already pretty high up on that line near going into, and these are clinical terms I'm going to teach you, right? Up here, this is high zone. That's what I call the freak out zone. And down here, low zone, that's the shutdown zone. I am much more likely, because of temperament and my trauma history and my personality and all of my life experiences, right? I am more likely to get bumped up. Some of you might be more likely to get down. This is really helpful to know. And when you co-lead in a wilderness program, you and your co-lead should know, hey, what's it look like for you when you get bumped out of your resilience zone? How will I know? And what can I do to help you? What can I do to help co-regulate? You know, for me, again, it was just throw me in the tent and chuck mini Snickers bars at me. I can think of an Outward Bound course where a co-instructor literally did that. He's pushing my head down in the tent, throwing Snickers bars at me. He said, come out when those are gone. It worked. So co-regulation, very important. I'm glad some of y'all are laughing at me. I like to be funny, but sometimes I don't think I am. All right, so the community resilience model has lots of tools for us to get back into our resilience zone. And I wanted to just give you a couple before we go into the storytelling piece. We're going to go through this pretty quickly because I want to get Andrew to get you into breakout rooms to do some of the storytelling reps, I'll call them. But first, let's look at just some grounding activities that you can do on your own or with other people to help them get back into their resilience zone. First of all, right, tracking is simply just paying attention to sensations in your body. We just talked about that, right? So you want to kind of grounding. You can do it with me right now, right? I'm going to sit in my chair. I'm going to put both my feet firmly on the ground. I'm going to get in a comfortable position so I can kind of relax my body. I'm going to do something with my hands that's calm and comforting. For me, that's just kind of put them on my lap and just feel the weight of my hands on my legs, right? So I'm going to go ahead and ground. And then you might close your eyes. You might just do a single point focus, you know, but you want to check in with sensations in your body. And there are different ways of doing this. Sometimes we need to check in with sensations that are not pleasant, right? Of tension or tightness. And we're so intuitive. I just think human beings are so amazing, like how hardwired we are to heal. Yeah, Lucas, again, you're just really making me do the neck thing. I love it though, because we intuitively, our bodies, I really believe this, intuitively know what we need. You know, and so if I said, oh, let's do it, stand up. If you're not already standing, you can stand up and just kind of check in and just see like, oh, what does oh man, my shoulders, I've got Zoom neck for sure, right? It's such a subconscious process to just see what it is that your body needs. You're not even saying, hey, body, what do you need? Your body's just talking to you. It's giving you wisdom all the time. So this tracking can be really important. And you can also, if you do find tightness or tension or however you label it, you can also redirect your attention through the breath to someplace in your body that feels either pleasurable or neutral. That might just be like your big toe. My big toe feels pretty all right now, better than Willie Unsold's. Okay, that was a terrible joke. Okay. So thank you, Paul Wolf. I made Paul laugh, so that's good. So another thing we can do to ground is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How many people are familiar with this or have used this in the field? Yeah, Erica, I see you saying, yeah, good. This is a quick and easy one, right? If we, I'm gonna turn that off. If we have a participant on a program or we ourselves, right, are getting out of our resilience zone. I've used this with students that are having a panic attack. It is very helpful. It is very simple. You do not need to be a mental health professional to use a tool like this, right? 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, right? And always, you know, have like a piece of gum or a wintergreen lifesaver. That's like the wilderness educators, you know, money move so that your participants are not licking a rock, which would also be fine. But so there's this idea though also in the resilience literature about resourcing, right? So remember I talked about my paddle, right? This is an object that is also a resource for me. It is a reminder of uh, experiences in my life where I felt strong and capable, and I did hard things, and I had support, and I learned a lot, right? And so even this paddle or objects in our lives can be resources. Imagery can be very powerful. If you do any kind of guided imagery, using those things as resources to help people calm. Sometimes though, people need like help now, right? Which is like, Norton, here's a cold glass of water, right? You just have to interrupt the state, because remember, states become traits. So what we want to do is help people shift the state that they're in, even if that's like, hey, I want you to go for a walk with me. Let's go outside. Any of you that are parents know that if you had a kid that was throwing a temper tantrum and you hand them a lollipop, I mean, you can have a kid that is like Tasmanian deviling it, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, here, and they go, you have just shifted the state through redirection, through a little sweet treat, right? Maybe that's not always the right option, but it certainly does get them to shift. Now, the key is, can you get them to shift and stay? And this is where I think storytelling comes in. Storytelling comes in for me as a resource for building resilience. So, how I found this awesome article. I put the link here in the PowerPoint on Tiny Buddha. How to change your life by changing the stories you tell yourself, right? This is an amazing, amazing fact that the most important story we tell ourselves is the story we tell ourselves, right? I have a little post-it note up on my bathroom mirror that says, your brain hears what your mouth says. And those of you that like positive psychology, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? There is some element of fake it till you make it. This is why people have done randomized control trial studies about writing 3 things down every night that you're grateful for, and seeing statistically significant changes in people's levels of depression and anxiety. I might have been doing that at first, like begrudgingly. Doesn't matter. I'm going to build a habit, and it's going to then build and put in that groove, right? That positive neural pathway. So one of the things though we have to realize, remember how I talked about how storytelling is applicable in the entire experiential learning cycle? Sometimes the story that we're telling ourselves, like the story I was telling myself about my keynote last night at about 11:30, was what I might call a shitty first draft. I was telling myself the story that I didn't deserve to give a keynote. Who am I to give a keynote? I was telling myself I don't have anything valuable to say. I mean, I'm on and on, right? So thank God I know better. I identified my story. And in fact, I said some of that out loud to my life partner who was helping me co-regulate and was gently challenging me that even though this was my current story, we both know that it's not really true, right? So Brene Brown, who I love, she calls this your shitty first draft. And then I just found this beautiful Ernest Hemingway quote, right? The first draft of anything is just shit. And I'm sorry, I curse. It's part of my, it's like it's my outward, blame outward bound. No, I'm just kidding. Blame my mother. So we have to identify the story, but then we've got to hold ourselves accountable, because the story might not be that good. And we have to ask the question, is the story I'm telling myself going to open up possibilities, or is it going to shut them down, right? Is it going to create a context of hope, or is it going to create a context of hopelessness? So we then have to say, okay, the story I'm telling myself about this thing is, and just look at it. Don't judge it, just get curious. And then we need people in our lives, and we need to practice supporting a new story. And this is where emotions really come in, right? Because supporting your new story with facts will help you believe it, right? Like, so facts are, I've given other keynotes. They've gone pretty well. I've been given feedback that I'm not a half bad public speaker. Okay, that's data, that's facts, great. But sometimes once you're out of your resilience zone, facts don't really help, right? Because you don't believe them. Your prefrontal cortex has been hijacked. Therefore, you're not thinking logically. So that's when you really need to do some of those grounding exercises, get back in your resilience zone so that then you can experience some of those positive emotions. And that involves having compassion for yourself when you struggle with finding a good story, right? Finding a story that really works and supports your resilience. But here are some practice things that we're going to do. So I'm going to have you all go into some breakout rooms. We're doing good. We are done at what time? 4:50. We have like 30 minutes left, Andrew?
I think just shy of it. Yeah, we
Just shy.
yeah,
10 till.
4:50.
10 till. Okay, great. So here's what I'm going to do. I will, if you want, write these things down, okay? Or take a screenshot. That is the modern way. My students go, write it down. And then they just get out their phone and take a picture of the PowerPoint. And I'm like, oh yeah, that works. So write these down because these are the storytelling reps that I'm going to invite you to do. So what's going to happen is Andrew's going to create some breakout rooms. And I'm going to invite you to accept or join. However, again, self-assessing your own optimal level of participation. If you're feeling like, yeah, no, I just came to this workshop to listen, I really am not in a storytelling mood, then don't accept the invitation. And then Andrew can look at the breakout rooms and make sure no one's just in one all by themselves. And you can either stay in the large group with me, just chilling, or you can just turn your camera and your microphone off and you'll get a little bit of a break. But when should you choose to accept the invitation to the breakout rooms? When you get there with your either dyad or triad, I'm going to have you practice telling stories of resilience. And so you might decide to tell a story of something you're grateful for. And when you tell that story, don't just say, I'm grateful for my family. Okay, I told you my story. No, that's not a story. That's a statement. What's the story behind why you're grateful for your family, right? Or maybe you want to share the story of a time when you demonstrated optimism in the face of hardship. Or here's one of my favorite ones, right? On a good day, right? You fill in the blank. You fill in the blank. On a good day, what's that look like for you? On a good day at work, on a good day with your family, on a good day outside, right? Another one you might play around with is my superpower is, little story about your superpower. And then finally, and I will tell you, so I turned 50 this summer and I was sweating it really hard. And I wrote in my journal for 50 days leading up to my 50th birthday. And I did the gratitude thing. I wrote down 3 things I'm grateful for every day. And then I would fill in every day the phrase, today, my best self, ... And it was mind blowing. It was like the weirdest thing because it's like we know, just like our bodies know intuitively what we need to move and stretch and heal, we know who our best self is. And we certainly know when we're not being it, but this was like a strengths-based way of saying, today, my best self, right? So you might want to say during COVID, my best self, that's a kind of macro level. But those are things you can play with. So every person in the group or the dyad or the triad can pick a different prompt, but I want everyone to at least do one prompt, right? We'll probably take, I would say about 10 minutes to give you time in your groups to share those stories, okay? And then when we come back, I'm going to invite you to come back and share what that was like. Maybe 7 to 10 minutes. Okay. So Andrew, you ready to put folks in breakout rooms? Any questions before we do this? Okay, great. And I see the time in here. Super. Thank you, Brad. Brad and Brad, the Brads. Okay.
Christine and Andrew, I'm gonna stay in the main room in case you need anything. I'll be here.
Okay, super. I am going to turn off my camera for 2 seconds and I will be right back while they're in their breakout rooms.
Sounds great.
So Andrew, my coworker and I got placed in the breakout room together, and we are next to each other in physical location, and thought maybe we would tell stories to people we haven't met yet.
Great. Let me,
I'm sure he has
Thank you.
great stories.
how about Zoom doing a random breakout and putting you and your coworker together? I'll go in and
Beautiful.
shift. Yeah, thank you.
I was the only one in my breakout room.
Thanks for the
Or
heads up. Let me,
Felt that way at least.
Same. Same, but I was kind of okay with it.
I'd love to meet either Tim or Erica. So, hi, I'm Evan.
And
Nice to-
Maple.
Oh, there's more.
This is Maple. She's wanted to sit in my lap the whole day, so I figured I'd finally let her. You know,
Where are you both?
she likes stories. What's that?
Where are you both?
Oh, we live in New Hampshire. It's cold here. It's very cold
Andrew, do you need a
today.
hand?
Tim, I'm in Ashland, Wisconsin.
Yeah, so you're feeling the freeze.
Yeah, it's nippy out and very beautiful.
Yeah.
Where are you, Tim?
I'm in New York right now.
Right on.
Hey,
Everyone's
Christine,
chilly.
are you currently a co-host by any chance? Are you designated as a
I
co-host?
think so. Yeah. What do people need?
Well, can you assign me? Can you make me a co-host?
Who's me?
Brad Fairclough.
Let's see. Don't I just click on your name and hang on, let me go to participants. It's not allowing me. I can put you in I can do lots of things. I can pin you, rename
It's
you.
okay. It's okay. Andrew's back. I was just gonna try and help.
Okay. Are people having a hard
You're
time?
muted, Andrew.
Do you know how, I don't,
I like your dog.
I'm
Eric.
getting all sorts of folks asking for help in their breakout room.
Yeah,
Oh,
if you can assign me as a co-host, I can help you resolve some of those. Right now, I'm not a. I don't
how,
have any.
what is the help technical?
Well,
Or are
I
they
think
having?
the problem is that it randomly assigned people to breakout rooms and then the partner didn't show up. And
Yeah.
so they're wanting to get repaired with someone else.
Yeah, you just go to breakout rooms. Do you know how to do that? You go to breakout rooms and then you can move them. You can assign them to a room where there are people.
I am working on it.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
No worries.
You look very concentrated.
Brad,
And you know
should-
what? I was going to say we can also do a little bit of this in the large group if people want.
Hey, I was in a breakout room by myself. So I was just seeing if I could get into a room with somebody else.
Did you get to tell a story to yourself?
I did. Yep, I sure did.
The most important story you tell about yourself is the story
Yeah.
you tell yourself.
I told myself that. And it was a good one. I was also by myself.
Yeah, so one of the things that we realized is that it was great to be invitational with folks. And also then that meant that some of you got left alone. So unfortunately, we don't have tons and tons of time to play around with this.
No problem. I
But
wasn't
y'all,
sure to be reassigned, but I'm okay to have just told a story to myself. I need to be reassigned too. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
thanks, Erin. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Evan, if you can hear me, if you'll join your room, you've now got folks in there, I think.
Thanks. I'm not seeing an invitation popping up just yet, though.
It might show up like somewhere behind a different window. I have 2 desktops and I usually have to like search around to find the invitation, if that
Thank you.
helps.
Andrew, do you have some people in rooms currently?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So these are, you all are the ones it didn't work for.
Andrew, how can I be helpful here?
Well, if you want to, I'm just going through moving people.
Only the host can control the breakout rooms. Co-host, I can join one, but I can't control one or assign people.
I don't think I can either. But I wonder, I'm kind of feeling like we're a little up against time, and then I feel bad that you're having to do this. So I'm wondering if we want to just bring people back and maybe make an alternative plan. Do you want to do that?
That may be a good idea. It's I
Perfect.
can move people around, but other people have left the rooms or they're
I
not.
think let's do this, Andrew. Let's just close the breakout rooms. We'll bring everyone back together. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Hi, Erin Leonard. Now I can see people. We'll give folks a sec to come back and join us. The magic. Hi, Leslie. The magic of technology. Does that look like we have everyone, or are you still waiting on folks?
It usually gives like a 10-second countdown and then like forces you back to the main group. when you do
Oh,
breakout
okay,
groups.
perfect. I just didn't know how many people we had in the workshop. Looks like some of y'all got to get together. Nice. I love it.
At one point, there was 40 people in the room. So as long as we're seeing somewhere between 30 and 40, probably.
All right, perfect. Well, I stopped sharing my screen because we had a breakdown with the breakouts. No big deal, right? It's all about pivoting. For those of you that got in a room and you were like, wow, I'm in a room all by myself. So much for co-regulation. I do apologize. So we're all back together. So I'm going to just throw this out. Did anyone get to tell a story using some of those resilience storytelling prompts that you would be willing to share with the group briefly? Since we're all back together.
I was in a room by myself, so I started telling my own story to myself, and then I got switched to a room. So my story was really brief, but just that in my best self, I'm solution oriented and optimistic, and I help people be successful in whatever they want to do. And so remembering that in a time that's tough, because now is tough.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's really exciting. Think about what your brain, right, and your body is doing when you hear that story of resilience, my best self. It does something for us as the story listener also, right? To hear those resilience building prompts get answered. Someone else, does anyone else want to take a different prompt?
I will.
Thanks, Aaron.
I chose gratitude, and to be honest, I was nervous about telling my story to the group, and I had like a second to do it in. And when I quickly just poured it out, it kind of, I didn't even realize for myself what I was saying. And in that moment, I just realized that I am super grateful for all the hardships I've had in the last 2 years, which has just been this major life change of divorce from a bad situation, leaving all that I knew, all the money behind. And then I quickly realized when I go into the gratitude of it, I actually got custody of my kids in exchange for the money. And now that I've left, I've got a life that's truly my own. And I'm growing every single day in this beautiful world and experiencing moments like 10 times more than I ever thought I would. So just telling the story in itself and choosing that prompt helped me come to some great epiphany and conclusion just now. Made me want to cry.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, and Aaron, I just want to say thank you, because when I hear a story of someone being on the other side of something really, really hard and holding that time with gratitude, if I'm over here, maybe still in it, you just gave me a context of hope, right? To feel like, oh my God, okay, she got through this. Maybe I can get through this, right? And so that's why sharing our stories is so, so important. Thanks so much. Should we do one more?
Christine, I wonder if we want to put a voice to a couple in the chat. Erica shared, on my best days, I remember to put myself first, even when I have to take care of others. Thank you for sharing. And then Zachary said, with my job as a park interpreter, COVID has taken a toll on my work. However, it's given me the opportunity to build my resume in order to improve myself to a point I'm now interviewing for full-time positions with my state park system.
Wow, thank you, Zachary. Nice. Yeah. Thanks for reading those, Andrew. So these are stories that you can use, these prompts, with your participants, but really, again, in your own life. They're hard, but they're so vital. Again, because what you're doing is you're building that muscle, that resilience muscle, and it really does get stronger when these are the words that you're saying and sharing, right? And I think sometimes the one thing I really want to highlight is it's not about the disavowal of difficult or quote unquote negative emotions or experiences. You don't reframe someone out of their reality with racism. You don't reframe someone out of their reality with losing someone to COVID, right? I mean, that is their reality. The things that you were talking about, Aaron, those are hard, hard things. But the question becomes, in this struggle, right? It's about that stress wood again. Even if it's just like, what am I learning? Not, do I feel good? Is it better? But what am I learning, right? That's a classic experiential education question to ask ourselves in the midst of our struggle. So I'm gonna I know we're running out of time. This is so, so quick, but I'm gonna share my screen just one more time. And let's see, is that good? Can you see it? Okay, So I am really trying to conceive of this idea of resilience more and more and more, right? And so I, of course, believe the best thing for me is to get outside. If you ask me to tell you, my best self is outside, hands down, right? And so nature is really important. So I created this fun little acronym for all of you, just as like a little self-care mantra. I know some of you were talking about my best self remembers to take care of myself. So I have on here nutrition, acknowledge, right? Which is just like acknowledge the struggle. I'm having a hard time. Therapy, both little T and big T. I'm a social worker, y'all. There's no shame in going and talking to someone that's a professional. Also, write a poem, right? Cook a good meal, listen to a good song. Those are little T therapies. Unplug. We've been on the computer all day. When you get off today, go for a walk outside, right? Rest, exercise, and remember that nature heals. I don't think I have time to show. There's a video link on here. I'll put it also on the Whova app so you can go watch it. Maybe watch it before you go to bed tonight. It's a really beautiful kind of nature-based meditation, talking about the healing power of nature. But it asks this other question, which I think can be another really beautiful resilience storytelling prompt, which is, what is the source of my health, right? And so imagine saying that in first person, the source of my health is. So I'm just going to ask us maybe to end with writing that in the chat. If you can think of an answer to that question, the source of my health is, and just pop it in the chat for folks to see it. Because I think inherent in people's answers will be so many resources that we can build on towards our own resilience. I'm trying to pull up the chat so I can follow along. Maybe I'll stop sharing. We just have a couple of minutes. What is the source of my health? Yes, I will put the video. I don't know what the title of the video is, but let me go back. I'll put the link in the chat too. I suppose I can do that. Any questions just as we're wrapping it up? I realize that we are, again, kind of running out of time here. Here is the source of my health: faith and family, exercise and outside, the art of nature, nature and acceptance, wandering in the wild, enjoyment I see in others, connecting with nature, balance, connection, movement, creativity, humor, laughter. These are all good things. So please hold on to those things, tell stories about those things, tell lots and lots of stories about all of that goodness. We know living in the world today, a lot of the stories we hear are not resilience building stories. When you list the source of your health, when you talk about your superpower, when you talk about your best self, those are stories that the world needs. So I hope that these are fun tools for building resilience you can use in your own lives and with your participants.